Today on the principal's office. Miami preschoolers Gia Sarnicola and Zuri Copeland say they're not best friends.
I know.
They say they're closer than that. Closer than mere sisters even.
Hold on, I'm gonna wash the paintbrush.
In fact, Gia and Zuri truly believe they're twins.
Oh, yeah.
Ashley and Valencia are their moms.
They will tell you that they are twins, and they have a long list of reasons why to back it up.
To them, what makes a twin?
Similarities.
Similarities.
Look, come here.
For example, the girls say they're both 4, their birthdays are practically the same day, and of course the obvious physical similarities.
So what am I looking at here?
The same height.
Oh, because you're the same height.
Clearly twins, which is why they also insist on matching outfits whenever possible. So far, Ashley and Valencia have indulged them, but they also recognize there is some bitter to this sweet.
You know, you're happy for a few seconds, and then you become sad because they have to grow up. And then society takes over.
Indeed, society has already tried to take over.
Last month, Zuri and Gia were at a birthday party when an older kid told them they couldn't be twins because they don't have the same skin color. Gia broke down, but through her tears, she got out this rebuttal. She said, "You don't know what you're talking about. We're twins because we share the same soul."
I just get chill bumps.
Soul?
I was just like thrown by just that word.
Yeah.
Obviously, what Gia was trying to say is that at our core, we are one. And as we look back on this year, with all its division and racial strife, it's important to remember that while all this was going on, so was this.
Black children as young as 7 years old recognize and are affected by racism. And when black teenagers view traumatic events online, including viral videos of police shootings, they had higher rates of depressive and post-traumatic stress, including re-experiencing, avoidance, numbing, and even hyperarousal. Those are just two of the alarming effects that we talked about in part 1 of our series and our discussion last week when we discussed mental health in our schools with our outstanding guests. And again this week we are back and we are joined with Mr. Ricky Owens. Ricky is the Family Resource Youth Service Coordinator, a mouthful, at TJ Middle School. Aarron Sparrow is the mental health therapist at DuBois Academy, and Ideisha Bellamy, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Maryhurst. Please welcome them back to the show. Glad to have you for part 2 of this discussion. So now let's get to some new facts. Right here, we know that 9% of our black kids say they've had an episode of major depression this past year, but less than half of those received treatment. Why? And that's the question I posed to our guests. Do we still have a stigma about mental health in the black community? Do we still avoid talking about issues related to mental health?
I think it's both. I think that we do have a stigma in the community still about mental health. I think it's improving. But I think also when we talk about not noticing the signs in our children, it really starts with ourselves. Like, are you noticing the signs in yourself? How fast is your life going? I think when we consider having to slow down for this pandemic, you know, I can share just from a personal note, you know, I'm a mom of 5, and one of my kids had some behaviors and things that, because the pace was so fast, we were able to just kind of normalize those things and say, well, you know, she's going to grow out of that and that sort of thing. But now that we've been through this period of a pandemic, several months in, we were starting to slow down and say, you know what, this doesn't really seem right. And so I think it's two-part. I do think that we fail to notice the signs, but it's not from negative intent. Sometimes it's just the fact that our life is moving so fast, and now we're in this place where we're becoming so aware of it because we have more time to spend with ourselves and to sort of recognize that things are not going as well as maybe we thought they were when we were on autopilot.
I definitely think there is a stigma. I feel like we, as a culture, we oftentimes have just been taught to keep things in, not let our family secrets out.
One of the other subsets of what's happened, I think, we talk about the racism and how that's affected our kids when they come back. But I also think about the kids who, for the first time in their lives, have been with their parents. You know, everybody gets 6 weeks maternity, but this new generation, they don't even take the 6 weeks. And they've never had an opportunity to spend this much time with their child. So one of the things that I think may happen is we deal with some of the emotions from just leaving mom or dad or grandma for the first time in a year and coming back. They've never been with their families for that period of time. So I think that's one of the things we're going to have to adjust to. But what are some of the least invasive forms of mental health support to maybe some of the greater or more invasive forms of support that might be offered to families? What can they expect when they come back into the school if their child continues to struggle?
There's a lot of wraparound services that's come into play since COVID's hit, and I think we need to take advantage of it. But in the wraparound services, a lot of times we miss families because families are working, so they have private insurance. It's way easier to get wraparound services when you have a Medicaid type of insurance than it is private insurance. I think
that's a whole nother show, by the way. Okay.
I think also, I know one thing we do with DuBois, like I said before, we talk about the courageous conversations. This parents getting together and knowing that there's somebody else going through something that you're going through. So try to find your village or your group. To me, is the least stigmatizing form of mental health that we can provide.
And that's interesting because that trying to find your group is so important to your own mental health and knowing that you're not alone. And many parents during this pandemic still think they're alone. Their child is not doing well, and I've heard so many people who were frustrated and yelling at their kids to the point of abuse, and I'm thinking, that's 70% of Jefferson County kids right now. You are not alone in that struggle. Getting with the therapist that you relate to. So should I actually ask, when my child goes back to school, should I ask if they say, you know, we're going to call in this agency to provide additional support? Should I ask, do they have somebody black? Yeah, are we ready for that in the school system? Are we at the level that we can say, I want a black, young, female therapist?
Did you know that nearly 75% of high school seniors are accepted to their first college of choice, but only a little over half can afford to attend, according to a recent study? The outcomes prove the need for college-bound students to consider tuition costs alongside of program offerings. Simmons College of Kentucky offers 5 degree concentrations and in 2018 was named the most affordable HBCU in the nation. Simmons College of Kentucky, creating the next generation of thinkers.
So then let me ask you the question that we don't like to talk about much, but is one at the forefront of everybody's mind, and that is the introduction of medicine and the part that it plays. Where does medicine enter the picture at school? Ricky, when does that come up where you are?
Oftentimes we talk about the stigma. I think there's a stigma associated with medicine. And there's a distrust with medicine. So, you know, a lot of parents, you know, reject medicine. I'm not a great proponent of medicine, but I will say, you know, at some point you have to rule out things, and then if medicine is your last option, like, you have to use that option. Like, you can't just say, my child will never be on medicine. Like, you know, and then I would also add to that is, if you're going to, you know, say medicine is your last option, then you need to use other options. You know, you need to try the therapy. You need to, you know, the communication at home. You have to change maybe the way you're doing things at home. Whatever it is, I mean, you have to try those other options And then if they don't work, then you have to say, okay, then, in my opinion, that, maybe medicine is our last alternative.
From a parental perspective, I have 2 children that have different types of needs, and I think it really starts from a parental perspective, which he definitely touched on, with a really comprehensive look at the child. So in our case, like we had one of our children was evaluated at Weisskopf, and it was so comprehensive that it really answered the question pretty clearly. And so I think that is the key piece, as he mentioned, as far as really making sure you're committing yourself to the whole process. We found with him that medication wasn't going to be really a good option, but we needed to make changes in the home and how we did things. We needed to make changes in how we communicated with him, and he still was going to benefit from some of those other wraparound services like Aarron mentioned. So I don't think it's the magic bullet, but I agree that you definitely need to have all options on the table if you're going to see your child really meet the maximum capacity of who they are.
Anybody knows me, I'm totally against medicine. The child's born with the tools, whatever tools they're going to be to make them successful in life. You can through therapy, you can rewire the brain to think a certain way to help you out. To me, I don't suggest medicine unless the child's going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody. Then I would refer out to medicine. The medicine, to me, is a quick fix for a parent who doesn't know their whole child. I think there's enough information out there now on side effects of medicine and what the do's and don'ts of medicine, different types of medicine, where we can make better decisions. But it's so easy for kids to get put on medicine to help the parent out. Now we don't try to figure the child out.
Excellent. Thank you for that point. So as compared with white folks and baby boomers who are black and black Generation Z and millennials, they have much higher rates of mental health problems and lower rates of using mental health services. So first, why do our children have more mental health issues than their parents?
We got access to more. Children have access to way more stuff right now, and they have way more ways to verbalize themselves than we did. They can text message, they can Instagram. And a lot of times people say Instagram is the best you see the best version of the person on Instagram every time you see a picture. So when you're feeling sad or low about yourself, it puts you into a depressive mind state that you can't look or feel like that. So I think a lot of times too, there's more conversation around mental health where you can realize, oh, this is what's wrong, this is what's going on, versus just, boy, you better pray it out, get out of my face about it.
Well, and I think that'll lead us to an issue again we don't necessarily have time to discuss on this show, but we have to think about the older generation as well and how they've dealt with this pandemic and the things that they've experienced, which are very much like the younger generation and isolated, not being around people, being cut off, and they don't have the luxury of being digitally agile and able to communicate effectively through those type of resources. So talk to me about why white young adults are using mental health services more than black young adults.
I think it is a matter of equity in certain aspects. Access, I think there's, mental health is accessible for black people, but not as much in certain areas. You talk about private insurance versus Medicaid. Just point of service, those services oftentimes are not good. So when you're experiencing mental health, I think the biggest difference between mental health and medical, if you go see a medical doctor and you don't like your medical doctor, it really doesn't matter because that person is going to be diagnosed through an x-ray or whatever. They're going to specifically find what's going on. When you go see a mental doctor, that person is going to have you participate in the treatment, participate in the conversation. So that relationship is important. So if you don't feel like the service is good, if you're not trusting the service, then you're not going to have a good diagnosis, you're not going to have a good experience, and that's going to lead to you not accessing those mental health services.
I agree. I think it is a matter of equity. I also think it's a matter of people of color. We have normalized discomfort. So we walk through life experiencing a lot of discomfort, and we will take a vitamin. We will find some home remedy. We will take it to the Lord in prayer. We have found every way, and it is part of it is our resilience. You know, it is the way that we have bounced back, and, you know, it worked for grandmama and it's got to work for me. And I don't think that all cultures have normalized pain the way that we have. And so when you have normalized pain, then mental pain is no different than, you know, we all have, you know, family members that walked around with that leg that is not quite right, or that eye that twitches. I mean, when you think about mental health, I mean, I can think about cousins in my growing up that we just knew this one's just not quite right. We're not going to bother him or her, you know. And so I think it is that matter of, it is the offshoot of that resilience that we show, that we just kind of say, it hurts and I'll just keep moving right on through, and it's just probably going to hurt until I die. And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, we do have other choices that we can make.
Finding a therapist who looks like you is a big deal for young teenage, young adolescent males and females when it comes time for therapy. I think a lot of white people, it's already set. Like, if you look at the past therapists as being either older white men who've made the theories that therapists work out of, and most of the time it's a woman therapist. I mean, it's a woman who's a therapist who performs the treatment. But I think it's time for, as time goes on, we're getting better, but as time goes on, you have to find that therapist that you relate to, that has that relationship, because the treatment is not easy. It's not, and you have to have somebody that you can relate to, that you can talk to, that you can work it out and tell your worst stories to, and still want to come back the next time. And I think on the other side, therapists have to be likable. You can't have a boring therapist. You can't, and a lot of times as black therapists, we get burned out. And the reason we get burned out because we're trying to treat people who are really not our clients, treat people who are really not our population, because you've been referred as that black therapist. You got to find your people. And once you find your people, things will be better. We need to do more to get more privatized healthcare. More therapists need to work with more private companies, and more companies need to hire more private therapists, especially in private practice, to work.
When I was a kid in the 5th grade, I had the opportunity to meet a robotics engineer at my school. And just from that one experience, I told my mom, like, Mama, I don't know what I want to do up to this point, but I think I want to be a robotics engineer. And I went and started researching that. I just felt inspired from that. And the next thing, it led me into space. So the best robots and the coolest robots were being produced as space rovers. So I'm like, I want to get into that. That's what I want to do. So that's kind of what led me into STEM and got me started. And then full circle, that's also the reason why I started. Brainstem University. While I was working at the University of Kentucky, we really struggled to recruit and retain STEM students, and particularly students of color. And for me, I had to go back and, like, why did I get into STEM? Like, why was I so excited about this? Why was I, so driven to, one, become a STEM major and to continue along with it during this tough, long journey, in college? So when I look back, it was just from that very beginning, having that early exposure to STEM, and that's where I had that experience where I met that robotics engineer. Had I been at my regular school, I probably wouldn't have had that opportunity to meet that robotics engineer that kind of inspired me. So,
what you said as far as getting what the therapist that you relate to. So should I actually ask, when my child goes back to school, should I ask if they say, we're going to call in this agency to provide additional support? Should I ask, do they have somebody black?
That's what you want. Yes, I want a black female, middle age. I know with me, my grandmother was that person. I can talk to my grandmother about anything. So if I had a therapist look like my grandmother, they're gonna get the best out of me. And you need to find that transference to your from client to therapist. You need to find that, because that really does help. You need to ask. I want a young black male. I want an older black male grandparent. You need to figure out who's the best person to talk to in your life and try to emulate that in your therapist.
So, Ricky, are we ready for that in the school system? Are we at the level that we can say, I want a black, young, female therapist?
You can ask, but I don't think that's going to happen. The truth of the matter is, I mean, most of the time, the therapists who we have in school-based therapy is just who's assigned to our school. So, we're not at the point where as a school we can even ask to meet those needs. Like I'm in a predominantly black school, but oftentimes we have predominantly white therapists. So, definitely you can ask, but I don't know how that's going to, I don't think you're going to get your request. But I will say from a non-clinical perspective, just maybe try to get your child in a mentoring group. There's mentoring groups in school. You have to seek out different avenues that, and programs that our kids can be involved with. One of the things in school is like having that sense of belonging. And, a lot of our kids are missing that this year. With participating in sports, we didn't have football in middle school. We didn't have basketball, even like band, orchestra, chorus, those types of things, cheerleading. So they're missing those things. So I would just encourage, parents to make sure their kids are involved. And even if you're going to stay with NTI, you can still get your kid involved, because most of those programs are going to be done virtually. So, talk to your school counselor, family resource center person about getting your kid involved in some type of group therapy. I mean, not necessarily therapy, but mentoring or whatever type of group.
And I think that's where we can get involved, yeah.
Even though we're not, we working in the school, knowing that if there's a kid who wants to see a therapist, it's not like me, we have the tool to refer out. The school's not going to be the end all be all when it comes to mental health. And I think as parents, me being a parent myself, and as working in the school, we got to realize that we don't have all the answers. So if it's my job, if I have a child who I'm talking to, and we not vibing, I'm not getting nowhere with them, they're not getting nowhere with me, because therapy only works for those who want it. So I need to find somebody who looks like you, or find somebody who you can work with. That's when I start to outsource. I need to find a wraparound agency or somebody who's providing a service that can work with you.
Right. And I think I'm so grateful that there are more of us today, and I'm saying black folk, men and women, who are interested in this field of study, who are going into it. I follow several groups on Facebook where this is such a popular topic. Who knows someone who is black who can help me with mental health and conversations? So I'm glad that we're moving in that direction. That's something that we'll just need to continue to do. But let me go back
Before
one
we transition
step.
from that, can I add one thing to that? I think really when you're looking at that as well, that you should be able to ask for like the LGBTQ plus. Yes. Wherever your child is, make sure that you're sort of taking in that all of that, because it may be that they identify more in one area than the other, or they're struggling more in one area than the other. But I do agree that the right to ask is there, and we need to know that we have the right to ask and continue to ask and find those resources that meet our kids where they are.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that this pandemic, this season of our lives have told us, that if you don't ask, no one knows. If you don't speak up for yourself, nobody's going to speak up for you. So it's important that you know exactly what your child needs as they go. In our last few minutes, I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to kind of share with us anything you like, maybe any information that was jogged by our discussion, or something you really want to hone in on and share with our listeners and our watchers, our viewers, that might be unique to them and their needs at this time. Anybody like to go first?
I'll go. We talked about the stigma of black people wanting to go to therapy. I think we got to separate too, and we have to get better as therapists. We have to separate CPS from therapy. I know a lot of times people are afraid to talk to therapists because of they're afraid their kids are going to get taken away. Or they're afraid of the reaction of the therapist of being judged of anything they say, because us as black people raise our kids a little different. We do. And we raise, like I said, we raise out of survival, and we parent out of fear. So I think that's one reason we need to get better as black people. And as therapists, we also have to get better as knowing different cultures, being a cultural competent therapist. It's more than just taking a course. You have to actually understand, just because I'm black, there's a difference between a black person in the East that lives in the East End and a black person who lives in the West End. And there's a difference between a black person who lives on 32nd and a black person who lives on Algonquin. You just have to know the different cultures and understand it's continuous learning, continuously learning people, and continuously pushing people to be their best self while you're learning. But we have to learn each other.
I think I would say, just as a parent, and I mentioned earlier, we had a child actually that has been newly diagnosed during this time period with some unique needs that we just didn't see coming. And I think my advice to parents right now is to act now. Our sort of mindset that it's going to get better, it's going to change, things are going to get better when we get back to school. What if it doesn't? And act as if it doesn't. And then if it miraculously gets better, great. But, I think now is the time to secure the services that you need for your child. Don't wait for them to get into the school setting and for you to start getting those phone calls. Start setting those appointments up now and building those relationships up now so that the child has secure footing to be able to walk in the door on the first day of school. A lot of our kids need to be having those conversations with safe people now of what is it going to look like that first day that I have to put my backpack on? How am I going to feel that first day that I'm on the school bus beside someone and I don't know what my comfort level is going to be. And I think that is the role that parents can play right now that will give our kids a head start to be able to get back and at least be in the mental mind frame with the understanding that there's going to be catch up for everybody as it relates to the academic piece. But this is the part that we can do now simply by making that call.
And she actually just took what I said. But just to follow up, just kind of like, just the communication part, because our kids have not been communicating in a lot of cases. So just as parents, communicating with your child right now, even like, I think like prayer, you oftentimes we pray for our kids, but we don't teach our kids how to pray. So just having them speak up, praying over dinner, praying, just simple things that we do, everyday things we do in life, but just giving our kids every opportunity they can to express themselves, to speak out loud, because when they get back to school, that's going to be a big missing, piece, is just, trying to reteach them how to speak out loud and speak up for yourself. Like when I gave the story the first time about my daughter who didn't vocalize how, what was wrong in her life as far as racism, like, every child should have the opportunity and the freedom to feel like that they can speak up for themselves and speak out about issues that are going on, and that starts at home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there you have it. We've done our best over the last 2 episodes to give you information and tools you need to help our children and yourself, your children and yourself, our children and yourself get through these 2 pandemics we've suffered, coronavirus and exposed racism. Thanks to our guests. They have been awesome. All of their information is available for you at the end of the program. Please reach out if you'd like more information. We thank you so much for being with us. I'm Principal Pennix, and thank you for hanging out with us. Our work continues next week, and I hope to see you right here, same place, same time. And as always, thank you, and to God be the glory.